Karen's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard, the blue glow illuminating her determined face in the pre-dawn darkness. She'd been awake for 6 hours, cross-referencing bank statements, building permits, and contractor invoices she'd discovered on Martinez's phone. The evidence was damning, and it was all going to Patricia Pemberton's personal inbox in approximately 30 minutes. Her doorbell rang at 6:47 a.m. Karen Elizabeth Whitman. Patricia Pemberton's voice could shatter glass. Open this door immediately. Karen took her time, adjusting her silk robe and running her fingers through her silver hair. When she finally opened the door, Patricia stood flanked by 2 other HOA board members, their faces twisted with indignation. Patricia, darting, Karen smiled sweetly. "How lovely to see you so early. I was just about to send you something interesting. You hacked into police property." Patricia's perfectly styled blonde hair seemed to vibrate with fury. "That's a federal crime." "I prefer borrowed and researched," Karen replied, stepping aside to let them in. "Coffee? I have some fascinating reading material to go with it." Board member Harold Finch, a man who'd never met a regulation he didn't love, shifted uncomfortably. "Karen, this has gone too far. The pool incident, the phone theft." The pool incident was a splash. The phone was temporarily borrowed. But this, Karen gestured to the printed documents spread across her dining table. "This is embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy." Patricia's composure cracked. "You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" Karen picked up a bank statement. Willowbrook Estates Community Fund, account #4521. Authorized withdrawals only by board president approval. Funny how many withdrawals coincide with your kitchen renovation timeline. And this, she held up a contractor invoice. Pemberton Landscaping Services, owned by your nephew Timothy. Quite the family business. The third board member, elderly Mrs. Foster, sank into Karen's armchair. "Patricia, please tell me this isn't true." "It's not what it looks like. It looks like you've been stealing from your neighbors," Karen interrupted. "From people who trusted you. From people like me, who've been paying into this community fund for 15 years. Patricia's face flushed red. "Your husband should have read the fine print before he planted those monstrosities." "Don't." Karen's voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than shouting. "Don't you dare bring Robert into this. He followed every rule, filed every form. You changed the regulations after he died, specifically to target his roses." The room fell silent. Harold cleared his throat. "If these documents are authentic, they're from the police database," Karen said. "Officer Martinez was investigating financial irregularities. Apparently, someone filed an anonymous complaint about HOA corruption last month." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "That was you." "Actually, no. It was Mrs. Henderson. Turns out she's been keeping meticulous records of every violation, every fine, every suspicious expenditure. She's been building a case for months." Karen's phone buzzed. A text from her neighbor. "Package delivered. Check your front porch." Speaking of Mrs. Henderson, Karen smiled. "She's been quite busy." "Harold, would you mind retrieving the box from my porch? I think you'll find its contents illuminating." As Harold returned with a banker's box full of files, Patricia made her move toward the door. "I don't have to listen to this nonsense." "Oh, but you do?" Karen blocked her path. "Because in about 20 minutes, this evidence goes to the county prosecutor. In 40 minutes, it goes to the local newspaper. And in 1 hour, it goes to everyone on our community email list. You're bluffing." Karen's smile was sharp as a blade. "Patricia, I'm 73 years old. My husband is dead. My children live across the country. And you're trying to dig up his memorial garden. What exactly do you think I have to lose?" 6 months later, Karen stood at her kitchen window, watching the sunrise paint her garden in shades of gold and pink. Robert's roses had returned to their original glory, and the memorial garden had become a neighborhood gathering place. Children played among the flowers, while their parents discussed the new HOA board's latest community improvements. The coffee maker gurgled to life as her phone rang. She'd learned to screen calls carefully. Fame was exhausting for someone who'd never sought it. Karen Whitman speaking. "Mrs. Whitman, this is Detective Rivera from the county prosecutor's office. I wanted to update you on the Pemberton case. Karen settled into her favorite chair, the one that gave her the best view of the garden. Good news, I hope. Very good. Patricia Pemberton has agreed to a plea bargain. She'll serve 18 months in county jail, pay full restitution to the community fund, and is permanently banned from serving on any HOA board. And her nephew? Timothy Pemberton is facing his own charges for fraud and conspiracy. His landscaping company has been dissolved, and he's agreed to cooperate with our investigation. Karen smiled. What about the other board members? Harold Finch and Mrs. Foster have been cleared of any wrongdoing. They'll be testifying about the intimidation tactics and financial pressure they faced from Patricia. Good. They were victims too, in their own way. There's something else, Rivera continued. The county is investigating similar HOA corruption cases in 3 other communities. Your actions have opened a much larger investigation. After hanging up, Karen walked outside to check on her roses. The memorial garden had expanded beyond her property line. Neighbors on both sides had contributed space and plants, creating a living tribute that stretched down the entire block. Morning, Karen. Mrs. Henderson called from her front porch. Coffee's ready if you want to join me. This had become their routine: morning coffee, afternoon planning sessions, evening walks through the neighborhood. Karen had discovered that retirement was much more interesting when you had a purpose. Be right there, Karen called back, then paused at Robert's favorite rose bush. You'd be proud of what we've accomplished, old man. Though you probably say I could have done it without stealing phones from police officers. She could almost hear his laugh on the morning breeze. 20 minutes later, Karen and Mrs. Henderson sat on the porch, reviewing the new HOA bylaws they'd helped draft. The document was a masterpiece of transparency and accountability. Board meetings open to all residents, financial records publicly available, and strict limits on board member authority. The Martinez family wants to host the next community barbecue, Mrs. Henderson reported. Jennifer's husband is setting up a playground in the common area. That's wonderful. What about the pool situation? The new board voted to extend pool hours and allow children's toys. Patricia's adults-only policy has been officially rescinded. Karen chuckled. I'm going to miss having the pool to myself, but it's worth it to see those kids enjoying summer. Speaking of summer, Mrs. Henderson pulled out a letter. We received a request from the Sunset Hills community. They want you to speak at their next board meeting about standing up to HOA corruption. Me? I'm no expert. Karen, you're the woman who stole a police officer's phone while floating on a pool flamingo and used it to take down a corrupt HOA president. You're exactly the expert they need. Karen considered this. At 73, she'd never imagined becoming a community activist. But then again, she'd never imagined being a widow either. Life had a way of surprising you. Schedule it for next month, she decided. But I want to bring Mrs. Henderson and Harold with me. This was a team effort. As they planned their presentation, Karen's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You haven't won yet. This isn't over. P. Karen showed the message to Mrs. Henderson, who frowned. Should we call the police? No, Karen said, deleting the message. Patricia's in county jail. Someone else is using her phone, probably trying to scare us. But deep down, Karen knew the text was authentic. Patricia Pemberton wasn't the type to give up easily, and 18 months wasn't a long sentence for someone with her resources and connections. What are you thinking? Mrs. Henderson asked. Karen looked out at the memorial garden, where a young father was teaching his daughter to identify different types of roses. I'm thinking we need to stay vigilant. Corruption is like weeds. You can pull them up, but they'll grow back if you don't tend the garden. So what do? We keep fighting. We help other communities organize. We make sure Patricia's replacement knows we're watching. Karen's smile was both sweet and dangerous, and we remember that sometimes the best defense is a good offense. As the sun climbed higher, Karen felt the familiar surge of purpose that had driven her for the past 6 months. The battle for Willowbrook Estates was won, but the war for community justice was just beginning. After all, she still had that flamingo pool float, and there were plenty of other corrupt HOA boards that needed investigating. The roses rustled in the morning breeze, and Karen could swear she heard Robert's voice. "That's my girl, always ready for the next fight." She raised her coffee cup in a silent toast to the garden, the neighborhood, and whatever battles lay ahead. Some fights were worth having, and some victories were worth protecting. The revolution would continue, one stolen phone at a time. The Willowbrook Estates Community Center hadn't seen this many residents since the great mailbox color debate of 2019. Karen arrived fashionably late, her arms full of printed evidence, and her confidence radiating like heat from summer pavement. The room buzzed with nervous energy. Word had spread quickly through the neighborhood's gossip network. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen announced, not bothering with the microphone, "I believe we have some community business to discuss." Patricia Pemberton sat rigidly at the board table, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. Officer Martinez stood near the back, his expression unreadable. Karen had called him personally that morning, offering full cooperation in exchange for his testimony about the financial irregularities he discovered. "This is highly irregular," Patricia's lawyer interjected. "My client hasn't been formally charged with anything." Yet, Karen replied cheerfully, "Mrs. Henderson, would you mind distributing the packets?" Her neighbor moved through the crowd like a woman on a mission, handing out manila folders thick with documentation. Karen had spent the previous day helping her organize 15 years of HOA records, creating a timeline of corruption that would make a forensic accountant weep. "What you're looking at," Karen continued, "is a pattern of theft, fraud, and abuse of power that goes back to Patricia's election as board president." Mr. Chen, the elderly man who'd been fined for his non-conforming mailbox, stood up. "My wife and I have paid over $3,000 in fines these past 2 years. For what? Paint colors that were supposedly wrong, though they matched the approved palette exactly. Because the approved palette changed," Karen explained. "Patricia's nephew Timothy gets the contract for corrective maintenance every time. Look at page 7. His company has received over $40,000 in HOA work since 2022. The room erupted in angry murmurs. Harold Finch tried to restore order, but the damage was done. Karen had lit a fuse that had been waiting years to explode. "My bird feeder was too conspicuous," Mrs. Henderson called out. "But Patricia's decorative fountain, twice the size, that's perfectly acceptable." "Different regulations apply to board members," Patricia said tightly. "It's clearly stated in the bylaws." "Bylaws that you wrote," Karen interrupted. "Bylaws that conveniently exempt board members from most restrictions. Bylaws that allow you to change regulations without community vote." Young Jennifer Martinez, no relation to the officer, stood up with her toddler on her hip. "You fined me for chalk art on my driveway. My 3-year-old drew a flower with sidewalk chalk, and you called it defacement of community property. The rules are the rules," Patricia snapped. But her voice lacked conviction. "Your rules," Karen's voice carried across the room. "Rules designed to extract money from your neighbors while exempting yourself and your family. Rules that target the elderly, the young families, anyone who dares to make this place feel like home instead of a prison." Officer Martinez stepped forward. "I've been investigating financial irregularities in the HOA accounts. The evidence Mrs. Whitman provided has been instrumental in building a case built on illegally obtained evidence," Patricia's lawyer protested. "Evidence that was discovered during a routine investigation into community complaints," Martinez corrected. "Mrs. Whitman's intervention simply expedited the process." Karen caught the officer's eye and nodded her thanks. He'd be more understanding than she'd expected, especially after she'd explained about Robert's roses and the memorial garden. "I call for a vote of no confidence," Harold announced suddenly. "Patricia, I move that you be removed from the board immediately." "You can't do that." Article 12, Section 4, Mrs. Henderson called out. "Emergency removal procedures for board members facing criminal charges." Karen felt a surge of pride. Her neighbors weren't just angry, they were organized. They'd been waiting for someone to light the match, and she'd been happy to provide the spark. "All in favor?" Harold asked. The response was overwhelming. Hands shot up throughout the room, voices calling "A" with the fervor of revolution. Patricia gathered her papers with shaking hands. "This isn't over, Karen. I'll sue you for everything you're worth." "Patricia," Karen's voice was gentle now, almost pitying. "I'm worth exactly what you think I am." One old lady with nothing left to lose and a very long memory. As the meeting dissolved into celebration, Karen stepped outside for air. The real work was just beginning. The inflatable flamingo bobbed gently as Karen Whitman reached over the pool's edge, her manicured fingers closing around Officer Martinez's phone. The device was still warm from his pocket, and she could see the HOA enforcement app glowing on the screen. 17 pending violations, all from her street. "Ma'am, I need that back," Martinez called from the pool deck, his uniform already soaked from Karen's earlier accidental splash. He'd made the mistake of leaning too close while explaining why her prize-winning roses violated the community's uniform landscaping standards. Karen adjusted her wide-brimmed hat and took a sip of her mimosa. "This phone contains evidence of harassment, Officer Martinez. As a tax-paying resident of Willowbrook Estates, I have every right to examine it." "That's not how the law works." "The law?" Karen's laugh echoed across the water. "The law says my roses can't be taller than 18 inches. The law says my garden gnome is a non-conforming decorative element." "Whose law exactly are we talking about here?" Martinez stepped closer to the pool's edge, his hand extended. "Mrs. Whitman, please. I'm just doing my job." "Your job is to terrorize 70-year-old widows who dare to plant flowers." Karen's voice cracked slightly, the bravado faltering for just a moment. "Do you know what these roses mean to me? My husband planted them the year before he died. They're the only thing I have left of him that's still growing." The officer's expression softened, but his training kicked in. "I understand this is difficult, but the HOA board has clear guidelines." "The HOA board can kiss my wrinkled behind," Karen interrupted, scrolling through the phone with surprising dexterity. "Look at this. Mrs. Henderson, cited for her bird feeder being too conspicuous. Mr. Chen, fined for his mailbox being the wrong shade of beige. And here," she held up the phone triumphantly, "President Patricia Pemberton's address. 0 violations." 0. "Ma'am, that's private information." "Private?" Karen's eyes flashed. "You want to know what's private? The fact that Patricia Pemberton's nephew owns the landscaping company that gets all the corrective maintenance contracts. The fact that she's been embezzling HOA funds to pay for her kitchen renovation. The fact that she's the reason my husband's memorial garden is being destroyed." Martinez reached for his backup phone. But Karen was already copying files to her own device through the water-resistant case she'd cleverly prepared. Her late husband had always said she was sharper than people gave her credit for. "You're making a mistake, Mrs. Whitman," Martinez warned, his voice carrying a new edge. Karen looked up from the phone, her expression calm despite the chaos she'd just unleashed. "Officer Martinez, I've been making mistakes my whole life. But stealing this phone, this isn't one of them." She tossed the device back to him with a splash that soaked his remaining dry patches. The real mistake was thinking a little old lady in a pool would just roll over and play dead. As Martinez retreated to his car, Karen floated serenely on her flamingo, already planning her next move. The war for Willowbrook Estates had officially begun. Karen's phone had been ringing nonstop for 3 days. Reporters, prosecutors, and neighbors all wanted her story. She'd become the unlikely hero of Willowbrook Estates. But victory felt hollow as she stared at her husband's roses, now brown and dying from Patricia's final act of spite. "Mrs. Whitman." A young woman with a press badge approached her garden gate. "I'm Sarah Chen from Channel 7 News. Could we talk about your fight against HOA corruption?" Karen set down her watering can and studied the reporter. "You're Mr. Chen's daughter, aren't you? The one who became a journalist?" "Yes, ma'am. Dad told me what you did for the community. I'd like to share your story." "It's not my story," Karen said, unlatching the gate. "It's all of ours. Come, let me show you something." She led Sarah through her backyard, past the pool where everything had started, to the memorial garden. The roses were beyond saving now. Patricia had convinced the landscaping crew to spray them with herbicide before her removal from the board. My husband planted these in 1987, Karen explained, her voice steady despite the pain. He said they'd outlive us both. He was wrong about that, but he was right about something else. He said sometimes you have to fight for what matters, even when the odds are against you. Sarah's camera operator began filming as Karen continued. Robert was a quiet man, but he believed in doing the right thing. When he saw bullies, he stood up to them. When he saw injustice, he fought it. I spent 47 years married to that man, and I never once saw him back down from a fight that mattered. Is that why you took the officer's phone? Karen laughed, the sound carrying across her ruined garden. Honey, I took that phone because I was angry. But I used what I found because I was tired of being afraid. Tired of watching my neighbors suffer while Patricia and her cronies got rich off our misery. The charges against Patricia Pemberton are quite serious. They should be. She stole from every family in this community. She destroyed property, harassed elderly residents, and abused her position for personal gain. The charges aren't serious enough, if you ask me. Sarah nodded. There's been talk of criminal charges against you as well, for accessing the police device. Let them come, Karen said firmly. I'd rather spend my final years in prison than watch my neighbors suffer in silence. Final years? Karen's expression softened. I'm 73, dear. I've got good days and bad days, but I don't have forever. The question is what I do with the time I have left. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Henderson. Check your front yard. Karen and Sarah walked to the front of the house, where a small crowd had gathered. Her neighbors were planting new roses, dozens of them, in every color imaginable. Harold Finch was directing the operation while Mrs. Henderson supervised the soil preparation. We took up a collection, Harold explained, his face flushed with effort. Everyone contributed, even the young families with kids. Jennifer Martinez approached with her toddler, who was clutching a small potted rose. Emma wanted to plant one for Mr. Robert, she said, using the name the neighborhood children had adopted for Karen's late husband. Karen knelt down to the child's level. What color is your rose, sweetheart? Pink, Emma announced proudly. Like the ones in the picture. Karen looked up at Jennifer, confused. What picture? The one Mrs. Henderson found in your husband's workshop. He kept photos of all his gardening projects. The roses were originally pink. Patricia had them replanted with white ones after he died. The revelation hit Karen like a physical blow. Robert's roses had been pink, his favorite color, the color of their wedding flowers. Patricia hadn't just violated community standards, she desecrated his memory. Are you okay? Sarah asked, her camera still rolling. Karen stood slowly, her hands trembling slightly. I'm better than okay. I'm furious all over again. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd memorized. Officer Martinez? This is Karen Whitman. I have additional evidence about the Memorial Garden vandalism. Yes, I'll hold. As she waited, Karen surveyed her front yard, her neighbors working together, children playing between the flower beds, elderly residents sharing stories about Robert's kindness. This was what community looked like. This was what Patricia had tried to destroy. Martinez, I need you to photograph something in my late husband's workshop. We're going to add destruction of memorial property to Patricia's charges.